Alexander Powell stopped in the doorway as if he'd walked into a nightmare. His briefcase slipped from his fingers. His lungs forgot how to work. The wheelchairs were empty. Both of them. On the floor, his housekeeper knelt beside his twin sons, her hands guiding their legs in slow, careful motions. Jack laughed, a real, bubbling laugh Alexander hadn't heard in a year and a half. Jordan clapped, unsteady but delighted. For one suspended second, the scene looked almost normal. Then fear slammed into Alexander's chest. What is this? His voice cracked like glass. What do you think you're doing? 18 months earlier, a drunk driver had shattered his life in a single violent moment. His wife, Catherine, was driving their 4-year-old twins home from preschool when the car ran the red light at 70 miles an hour. The impact crushed the driver's side. Catherine died instantly. Jack and Jordan survived. But survival came with a price. Severe spinal trauma. T12L1 damage. Words spoken gently by doctors who had already accepted the outcome. They may never walk again. Therapy could help with muscle tone. Quality of life could be managed. Hope, however, should be kept realistic. Alexander took those words and built a fortress out of them. He replaced joy with safety. He replaced possibility with protocol. He bought the best equipment money could buy, hired top specialists, installed routines so rigid nothing unexpected could slip through. The boys spent their days in custom wheelchairs, perfectly supported, perfectly protected, and slowly disappearing. Then Abigail James arrived. She was 29, hired to cook, clean, help around the house. No medical background, no credentials, just warm eyes and a voice that spoke to the boys like they were still whole. She didn't see injuries. She saw children. While Alexander traveled for work, Abigail noticed what everyone else had missed. The way Jack's toes twitched when he laughed. The way Jordan leaned forward when music played. She remembered her younger brother, once told he'd never walk again after an accident, and how persistence, patience, and belief had rewritten that story. So she tried, quietly, gently, in secret. And now Alexander was staring at it. Get them back in their chairs, he said, his hands shaking. You're not a therapist. You don't get to decide this. The room went silent. Jack's smile vanished. Jordan's eyes filled with tears. Abigail held Alexander's gaze for a long moment. Then she nodded. She lifted Jack first, whispering something soft. Then Jordan. Both boys reached for her as she buckled them in, not for their father. That hurt more than Alexander expected. I need you to leave, he said hullily. She didn't argue. They were happy, she said quietly, and walked past him. That night, Alexander sat alone in his study, bourbon untouched. Memories crashed in waves. Catherine's laugh. The unopened photo from her last day. The promise he'd made at her grave. I'll take care of them. At 2 a.m, he pulled up the security footage. He watched everything. Abigail singing while the boys stretched. Jack's toes flexing, barely, but unmistakably. Jordan smiling, really smiling. And then he heard her whisper, almost a prayer. Trying is where miracles begin. Alexander pressed his palms to his eyes and broke. She hadn't hurt them. She had seen them. He found her that night on the floor of the boys' bedroom, wrapped in a blanket, refusing to leave them alone. When morning came, he admitted the truth out loud for the first time. I was wrong. It wasn't enough. But it was a start. New tests followed. Doctors were skeptical, until the scans came back. Nerve activity, muscle response. Faint, fragile, but real. What changed? One doctor asked. Alexander looked at Abigail. Someone refused to give up. Not everyone agreed. His mother arrived like a storm. Sharp words, legal threats, warnings about liability and false hope. Then Jordan stood, shaking, supported, and lifted his arms toward her. Grandma. Margaret Powell had built her life on control. And in that moment, it slipped through her fingers. She said nothing. She left. And later, she stood down. Progress came slowly, painfully. Inches gained through weeks of effort. And then, one afternoon, Abigail was gone. She left a note. They're so close. Don't stop. The boys cried. And Jack spoke a full sentence for the first time since the accident. Where's Miss Abby? Alexander didn't hesitate. He found her. Rain-soaked. Breathless. My son spoke today, he told her, tears streaming. Because of you. She came back. 4 months later, Jack took 4 unassisted steps. Jordan followed. Doctors called it extraordinary. Alexander called it mercy. 10 months later, the Powell Recovery Initiative opened its doors, funding unconventional therapy rooted in persistence and hope. Abigail became its heart. Margaret Powell shook her hand and said simply, you proved me wrong. That evening, Alexander watched his sons race toy cars across the floor, standing, laughing, alive. The wheelchairs sat folded in the corner, unused, and Alexander finally understood what he'd missed all along. Sometimes the miracle isn't that someone learns to walk again. It's that someone refuses to let you stop believing you can. That night, after the house grew quiet, Alexander sat alone in the therapy room. The mat still held the faint warmth of his sons' bodies. He ran his hand over it slowly, as if touching proof that hope had once lived here and could live here again. For the first time since Catherine died, he didn't feel like a man bracing against loss. He felt like a father moving towards something fragile and alive. Down the hall, Jack and Jordan slept peacefully, their breathing steady. Abigail's soft humming drifted faintly through the house as she cleaned up the day. Alexander closed his eyes and let the sound settle into him. He finally understood the truth grief had hidden from him. Protecting his sons had never meant limiting them. Loving them meant standing beside them, even when the path forward terrified him.